Let me ask you something. What do you do when you're the most beautiful, talented, perfect being in existence and someone still says no to you? If you're Apollo, apparently you turn them into a tree. We need to talk about Apollo, the golden god, the shining one, god of the sun, music, poetry, prophecy, healing, archery, and pretty much every other skill the ancient Greeks considered civilized and noble. He's perfection incarnated, rationality personified, the Enlightenment before the Enlightenment existed. And he's also a serial stalker who can't take no for an answer. Nobody talks about that second part. We get Apollo, the patron of arts, Apollo, the plague bringer when you anger him, Apollo, the beautiful archer with his golden lyre. But we conveniently skip over the fact that nearly every love story involving Apollo ends with the object of his affection either dead, transformed, or running away in terror. Why? Why does the god of reason, the god of civilization, the god of enlightenment have such a catastrophically bad romantic track record? And what does that tell us about what the Greeks actually understood about perfection, masculinity, and power? Because here's what I think. Apollo's romantic failures aren't bugs in his mythology, they're features. They're the whole point. Let's start with Daphne, the most famous example. Apollo sees her, desires her, chases her. She runs, he pursues. She's literally sprinting for her life, begging her father, the river god, to save her. And right as Apollo is about to catch her, she transforms into a laurel tree. Now, the standard reading is, how tragic! Apollo loved Daphne so much, and cruel fate prevented their union. He makes the laurel his sacred tree, wears it as a crown, turns it into the symbol of victory and achievement. How romantic! Except, stop. Read it again. Actually read what's happening. A woman is running away from a god. She's so desperate to escape him that she chooses to stop being human rather than be caught by him. She'd rather become a plant. She'd rather lose her humanity, her mobility, her voice, everything, than be with Apollo. That's not a love story. That's a horror story. And Apollo's response? He doesn't reflect. He doesn't think, maybe I came on too strong. He makes her into his symbol. He wears her. He claims her anyway. If he can't have her as a lover, he'll have her as an ornament. The god of reason learns nothing. Then there's Cassandra, beautiful Cassandra, to whom Apollo grants the gift of prophecy. He teaches her to see the future, and in return he expects her love. But when she refuses him, when she says no to the god of prophecy himself, he can't take the gift back. Divine gifts don't work that way. So instead, he curses it. She'll still see the future, she'll know exactly what's coming, but no one will ever believe her. Think about that for a second. The god of truth curses a woman so that she can only speak truth that will be dismissed as lies. The god of communication makes her communications worthless. The god of enlightenment condemns her to know everything and be able to save no one. And why? Because she said no. Cassandra sees Troy falling. She sees her family dying. She watches it all unfold exactly as she predicted, powerless to stop it. She's eventually murdered, still seeing it coming, still unable to prevent it. That's Apollo's revenge for rejection. The god of rationality is that petty. Or look at Hyacinthus, one of the few love stories where Apollo's affection is actually returned. Beautiful Hyacinthus loves Apollo back. They're together. It's working. And then, tragedy. During an athletic competition, Apollo throws a discus and it strikes Hyacinthus in the head, killing him. Some versions say it was an accident. Some say Zephyrus, the west wind, was jealous and redirected the discus. Either way, Hyacinthus dies, and Apollo, the god of healing, can't save him. The healer god is powerless, so instead Apollo transforms Hyacinthus's blood into flowers, the hyacinth. Again, transformation. Again, the beloved becomes a thing, a symbol, a flower to be plucked and worn and displayed. Even when love is mutual, it ends in death and conversion to decoration. You see the pattern. Apollo doesn't have relationships. He has acquisitions, and when acquisition fails, he still finds a way to possess. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Compare Apollo to Dionysus. They're opposites in almost every way. Apollo is reason, order, clarity, civilization. Dionysus is ecstasy, chaos, madness, wild nature. Apollo is the lyre and formal poetry. Dionysus is drums and frenzied dancing. And you know what? Dionysus has better relationships. When Dionysus falls for Ariadne, a mortal woman abandoned by Theseus, he marries her, makes her a goddess, stays with her. Their relationship endures. The chaos god has a healthier love life than the rationality god. What does that tell you? It tells you the Greeks understood something we keep forgetting. Reason without empathy is tyranny. Perfection without humility is violence. Control without consent is horror. Apollo represents the civilization that Athens wanted to believe it was, rational, enlightened, cultured, superior. But his romantic myths reveal what that civilization actually was: entitled, controlling, unable to accept rejection, convinced that its desires justified any action. Look at the oracle at Delphi, Apollo's most important cult site. The Pythia, the priestess who delivered Apollo's prophecies, was always a woman. She'd sit on a tripod over a crack in the earth, breathe in vapors, probably ethylene, modern geologists suggest, and enter a trance state. Then she'd speak Apollo's words. But here's the thing, her words were usually incomprehensible, babbling, ecstatic utterances, and male priests, always men, would interpret what she said. They'd make her divine madness into coherent prophecy. Think about that structure. The woman channels the god. The woman accesses the truth, but she's not trusted to speak it clearly. Men have to translate her. Men control the message. Apollo, god of clarity and communication, speaks through women but only allows men to interpret. That's not accidental. That's the whole system encoded in religious ritual. And the prophecies themselves were famously ambiguous. Cross this river and a great empire will fall. You will destroy a great kingdom. Statements that sounded clear but weren't, that could be twisted to justify whatever the questioner wanted to do. The God of truth spoke in riddles. The God of enlightenment obscured. Why? Because prophecy, like all power, needs to be controlled. If the future were actually clear, if truth were actually accessible, people might make their own decisions. They might not need kings and priests to tell them what to do. So Apollo's truth is always mediated, always controlled, always filtered through institutional power. Just like Cassandra's truth is filtered through the curse of disbelief. Now, let's talk about the sun thing, because this is where modern interpretation has really messed up. We call Apollo the sun god. We say he drives the sun chariot across the sky. We've completely merged him with Helios, the titan who was actually the personification of the sun. But originally, Apollo wasn't the sun god. He was associated with light, yes, with clarity, illumination, revelation, but the sun itself, that was Helios. Sometime during the Hellenistic period, after Alexander, when Greek culture was spreading and syncretizing with other traditions, Apollo absorbed Helios. The god of enlightenment literally consumed the god of the sun, materically became the sun. And that merger tells you everything about how Apollo was understood. He wasn't just associated with light, he was the light that reveals, the light that exposes, the light that allows no shadows, no privacy, no mystery. That's not comfort, that's surveillance. The all-seeing sun god knows everything, watches everything. There's nowhere to hide from Apollo's light. And that's presented as benevolent, as revelation, as truth. But revelation to whom? Truth for whose benefit? Go back to those myths. Daphne tries to hide, the light finds her. Cassandra tries to warn, the light silences her. Everyone Apollo touches is exposed, revealed, made visible, but on his terms, for his purposes. The enlightened god is also the exposure god, and exposure can be violence. Here's something most people don't know. Apollo was also a plague god. When he was angry, he'd shoot invisible arrows that brought disease. In the opening of the Iliad, Apollo sends plague to the Greek camp because Agamemnon dishonored his priestess. The healer god is also the god of disease. The same hands that cure can kill. The same light that reveals can burn. That's not contradiction, that's power. That's the reminder that the enlightened, the rational, the perfect, they're still dangerous, maybe more dangerous because they've convinced you they're good. Let me tell you about the Pythian Games, held at Delphi in Apollo's honor. They were second to only to the Olympics in importance. Athletic competitions, yes, but also musical and poetic contests, celebrating Apollo's dual nature, physical and artistic. And you know what the founding myth was? Apollo killed Python, the serpent who guarded Delphi. Python was ancient, chthonic, connected to the earth goddess. And Apollo came in, young, beautiful, an archer from afar, and killed her, took her oracle, took her sight, made it his. Then he established games to celebrate the killing. The god of civilization killed the earth serpent and turned it into entertainment. Progress defeats nature and throws a party. That's colonization as mythology. That's the new order destroying the old and rewriting history so the destruction looks like liberation. Here's what I want you to do. Go look at ancient statues of Apollo. The Apollo Belvedere, the most famous, or any of the classical representations. Look at that face. Perfect proportions, serene expression, ideal masculine beauty. Now remember that this is the face of the god who turned Daphne into a tree, who cursed Cassandra, whose lovers keep dying or transforming or fleeing. The perfect face tells you nothing about the violence beneath. And maybe that's the final lesson of Apollo, that perfection is a performance, that reason can rationalize anything, that civilization is just controlled brutality with better aesthetics. The Greeks didn't worship Apollo despite his flaws. They worshipped him because they recognized themselves in those flaws. The contradiction between enlightened ideals and violent reality, between rational philosophy and imperial conquest, between claiming to value truth and silencing anyone who speaks uncomfortable truths. Apollo is what happens when you build a god and a civilization on the belief that you deserve whatever you want because you're smart enough, cultured enough, civilized enough to deserve it. And when reality refuses you, when Daphne runs, when Cassandra says no, when the world doesn't bend to your rational will, you don't question yourself, you don't change, you just curse them. Transform them, make them into symbols that prove you were right all along. The laurel crown on Apollo's head isn't a symbol of victory, it's a woman who chose transformation over submission. And we've been calling it beautiful for 3,000 years. Maybe it's time to see it for what it is. The god of enlightenment, crowned in violence, still perfect, still shining, still incapable of understanding why people run from his light.